Time, Donald Trump still leading in the polls. His headline this week: President Bush did not keep the country safe from the 9/11 attacks. Jeb Bush defended his brother last night on Hannity. Roll that tape.
His view of history is just wrong. The simple fact is that when we were attacked, my brother created an environment where for 2,600 days we were safe. No one attacked us again. And he changed the laws, he did everything necessary, he united the country, and he kept us safe. And just a tip of the hat to that, and moving on to what the threats are today is what we ought to be focused on. Donald Trump is not a serious candidate as it relates to foreign policy.
All right, that was Jeb Bush on Hannity last night. Donald Trump joins us now. Sir, you were listening to that. What's your response to Jeb Bush?
Well, first of all, I think he's a very nice person. I have to say that. And, you know, he gave a speech at one point, and he also, during the debates, he said the country was safe under my brother. And I said, just very nicely, under a very little program, I said, well, wait a minute. It wasn't safe because the World Trade Center fell down under your brother's regime. So the world wasn't safe. The country wasn't safe. We had the biggest catastrophe and the greatest catastrophe we've ever had in history under your brother's reign. So, you know, he could have said maybe safe since. But, of course, then we went into the war in Iraq, and that was a disaster, complete disaster, cost thousands of lives and everything else. But the fact is, Stuart, he said the country was safe. Well, the country wasn't safe because the World Trade Center had just fallen down.
Well, what was George Bush's responsibility for 9/11, other than the fact that he'd been the president for 9 months?
Well, as Harry Truman says, the buck stops here, okay? And I will say that, you know, in looking back and remembering, having a good memory, you had George Tenet, the head of the CIA. Heck, he said that. Then you had the FBI, the NSC, and the CIA that weren't talking to each other. Do you remember that scandal where they hated each other and they were all jealous and lots of problems? And George Tenet actually was the director of the CIA. But the CIA, the NSC, and the FBI, they wouldn't talk to each other. They hated each other. And I'm saying to myself, what kind of management is that? I remember when it was happening, and they weren't able to compare notes. So you had that going wrong. And, you know, I mean, you would have been able, if you read my book, which was in 2000, I actually said that Osama bin Laden, who was a well-known terrorist at that time, I wrote the one political book, and I said Osama bin Laden's going to try and come in and do some big damage. That was 3 years before. So obviously, if I know about it, they know about it. They should have done something about Osama bin Laden.
Well, does Bill Clinton, President Clinton, does he have some responsibility for 9/11? Because he was the president for 8 years before George Bush.
Yes, I think he does. But I think they both do. But you can't say that the country was safe. I mean, how can you say the country was safe? He's just forgetting about one incident, and that was a big incident, and he didn't make that clear either. So he said that. And look, this all started about, I did this small show, and I had mentioned about, you know, the World Trade Center coming down. And frankly, I didn't think anything would be made of it. I didn't think it was a big statement at the time. But
did you plan it, Donald? Did you plan to make that statement?
No, I didn't plan it. No, I didn't plan it. No. What happened is that Jeb Bush started talking about it. And instead of just letting it go, he started talking about it. And now everybody, virtually, Stuart, is agreeing with me because, I mean, let's face it, you can't say the country was safe when the World Trade Center came down during his regime. Now, was Clinton possibly also guilty? Yeah, sure. He should have, you know, maybe been more vigilant. And he actually said he knew about Osama bin Laden. I knew about Osama bin Laden because I wrote about him in my book, I think 19 months before the World Trade Center came down.
Is your fight with Jeb Bush over?
Oh, I have no fight with Jeb Bush. I think he's a nice person. I have no fight with Jeb Bush. I mentioned to somebody, unimportant, but I mentioned to somebody that the World Trade Center came down during the Bush thing, so he has to take a certain responsibility for that. I think you would agree. By the way, everybody agrees with me now. I think that, frankly, Jeb shouldn't have brought it up. But I have no fight with Jeb Bush because I like him.
Do you now have a fight with Bill Clinton and or Hillary Clinton? Because you've just said that Bill Clinton has some responsibility for 9/11.
Well, he actually said that he knew that Osama bin Laden was around, but they didn't want to attack him at that time. And in all fairness to him, by that time he didn't knock down the World Trade Center. So they would have had to go in and, you know, get somebody that it would be wonderful if you could read minds. But if you read my book, I actually did. I did have the best vision of anybody because I said Osama bin Laden should be attacked, essentially. But you should read that, written in 2000 and written about 3 years before the event took place, and I talk all about Osama bin Laden. He was a very well-known terrorist at the time. And actually, they read it on one of the shows today, and they couldn't believe because it did have vision. And so it's nice to have vision. What can I tell you?
Now, there's a lot of speculation today about Joe Biden. The speculation is that he is going to run and that he will announce very soon. How would you rate him as a potential opponent?
Well, I think he's fine. Look, he's a vice president, but he's got faulty stats on his side because the country is not doing well. We just, we're the gang that couldn't shoot straight. We have $19 trillion in debt. We have real unemployment, and you cover this better than anybody. But if you add all of the people that have given up looking for jobs, as you know, that no longer fit into that beautiful statistic of 5.2 or 5.3%, 22% or something. So, look. The country is doing poorly. Our military, we don't win anymore.
We don't
win against ISIS.
You would beat Joe Biden easily?
Well, I think I would. Yeah, I think I would. I mean, I don't know that he's going to do it. I would think he wouldn't do it. Now, I might be wrong about that. I would think he wouldn't do it because I think it's a very hard road for him at this point. It's late, and I think it's a hard road, but everybody's telling me he's going to.
With your Republican opponents, you've gone straight after him, face to face, gone right at him. Would you do the same with Joe Biden?
Yes, I would. I mean, I would just. By the way, I'm always fair, and I'm very much a counterpuncher. With the Republican opponents, I only hit after they hit me, and some of them I haven't hit at all. I have great relationships with many of them, but some of them, I mean, Perry from Texas and Lindsey Graham, and some of these guys, they came at me for no reason. I mean, they were Rand Paul. And the good news is everybody that's hit me has gone down, which is a wonderful thing. I mean, that's what we need for the country.
Can I ask you about Secret Service protection?
Yes.
I believe you asked for it. Can you tell us the nature of the threat that you received?
Well, it's not so much. Look, you've probably seen last night I had 8,000 people in, and it was, I mean, the place was absolutely packed in South Carolina. We have, average crowds of many, many thousands of people. In Dallas, I had 20,000. In Mobile, Alabama, I had 35,000 people. In Oklahoma, I had 20,000 people. And, I go up to New Hampshire, where, by the way, a great poll just came out. The Boston Globe just released their poll, and it's a tremendous poll. I only say it's tremendous because I won. I wouldn't say it was tremendous if somebody else won.
Is the threat, do you think, from a terror group? Or
it could be. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I tell you what, there's such love in these rooms when I go in, or the arenas. There's such love, but we think it's necessary. And by the way, they think it's necessary because the crowds. I get the largest crowds by far of anybody, including Bernie Sanders. By the way, you need some protection. Sure. There's love in the room. There's great love in the room, but when you have that many people, you need something.
Now, in the UK, in Britain, they've obviously got a terror problem. They've got a lot of youngsters going over to fight for ISIS. About just under 1,000 are going over there. And they've got a whole new series of proposals to deal with this, including withdrawal of passports from some of these people who've gone overseas to fight.
Absolutely good.
And closing some mosques. Would you do the same thing in America?
I would do that. Absolutely. I think it's great. I know they have a lot of proposals over there. If you go out, you go fight for ISIS.
Can you do it?
You can't come back. Why can't you do it? You can do it here.
Can you close a mosque? I mean, we do have
Well, I don't know.
freedom.
I mean, I haven't heard about the closing of the mosque. It depends. If the mosque is, loaded for bear, I don't know. You're going to have to certainly look at it. But I can tell you one thing. If somebody goes over and they want to fight for ISIS, they wouldn't be coming back. And in this country, that's been proposed for 2 years now. And as usual, our politicians can't get together on it.
But it's not the politicians. It's President Obama primarily, isn't it?
Well, it's everyone. He's a politician.
Stuart,
It's everybody.
Why is this response so? I mean, it's not a very dramatic response to homegrown terror. It doesn't seem to be. Why not?
Well, I think it's incredible that somebody can come from this country or from England or wherever you may have it and go out and fight for ISIS and then come back into our country. If they want to fight for ISIS, I think that's fine. They're not coming back into our country if I become president.
Okay. There's various issues have been raised in this campaign. I wonder if I could go through them real fast and get your response to some of the proposals, often from the Democrat side, that have been made in this campaign. I'm going to start with a fast response, if you would. Paid family leave.
Well, it's something that's being discussed. I think we have to keep our country very competitive, so you have to be careful of it. But certainly there are a lot of people discussing it.
$15 an hour minimum wage.
We have to keep our similar companies are leaving is because salaries are too high. You look at what's going on in Vietnam and in China and so many different places. So we have to be very, very careful with that. That sounds so easy, but we have to be very, very competitive or we're going to lose all of our jobs in this country.
Well, it sounds like you're saying, no, we can't afford
I'm not a big fan because I want to be competitive with other countries, and that's what we're competing against, and that's what we're losing to.
Okay. Hillary Clinton proposes free pre-K for all.
Well, I don't like it because eventually you're going to have to raise everybody's taxes.
So that's a big
There is
no on
no
that
such
one as
thing,
well.
Stuart, there is no such thing as free. You're going to have to raise taxes. You do that, you're going to have to raise taxes. With that being said, we're going to be coming out with a plan on education, which is going to lower costs and make it really good. But that is it's very, very hard, very easy to do. Very, very easy to do. And you know what's going to happen? We already have tremendous deficits. You're going to have to raise everybody's taxes higher. We're already the #1 taxed country in the world. We have to be very careful.
Now, would you do a Bush 41 and say, read my lips, no new taxes? Would you do that?
Well, I could do that. I'm not going to do it on your show, but I could do that, and I could certainly think about doing that because my taxes, and under my plan, as you know, I'm reducing taxes, I think, more than any other candidate by far. So I could certainly, that's where my mindset is, not just keeping no new taxes. I'm substantially lowering taxes. I'm bringing the corporate tax down to 15. I'm bringing taxes down to the lowest point that they've been in years. And what's going to happen is the economy is going to take off.
How about this one? Hillary Clinton and the president say, do not build the Keystone Pipeline. And you say?
No, I would let the Keystone Pipeline be built, absolutely.
Apple is the computer company. It's got $183 billion stashed away overseas. What measures would you take to bring some of that money or all of that money back home to America?
Well, it's called corporate inversion. It's such a simple problem. We have billions and trillions, actually, at least $2.5 trillion overseas. Companies can't get it in. And the amazing thing about this one is everybody, Republican and Democrat, want the money to come back, and they can't even agree on that. So here, everybody agrees the money should come back. We should have the money in our country so we can rebuild different things and, have lots of fun with our infrastructure and everything else, which is falling apart and desperately needed. And even that, Stuart, we can't get back in. So here's a point that everybody wants. Everybody agrees the money should come back in. They can't even agree on that.
Break up the big banks. Now, you do business with the biggest of big banks here in New York City and around the world. A lot of people on the left want to just break them up. What say you?
Well, I disagree, but I also think we have to get rid of Dodd-Frank. The banks aren't loaning money to people that need it. The banks will give me all the money I need because I don't need the money. Anybody that doesn't need money is a great candidate to get money. If you need money to create jobs, to build something, whether it's buildings or a company, the banks aren't there. The regulators are running the banks, and that's why our country, people can't borrow money today.
You get rid of Obamacare as well as Dodd-Frank?
I would repeal Obamacare instantaneously and replace it with something much better, privately done. We get rid of the lines, the artificial lines around each state so that insurance companies can compete with each other. The insurance companies have made a fortune on Obamacare. I would get rid of Obamacare and replace it with something much better.
You've got a sweeping program here. Get rid of Obamacare, get rid of Dodd-Frank, vastly reduce taxes. That's a huge plateful. Could you get all of that lot done quickly?
I think so. I'm a leader. I've dealt with politicians all my life. I know how to get things done. Obamacare, by generator of tremendous loss for this country. Not only is it terrible where, I don't know if you've seen over the last couple of weeks, people are leaving Obamacare. You have 40%, 50%, 55% increases in premiums. People are leaving Obamacare. It's a disaster. Obamacare is a disaster. And people have just given up, so much so that they don't talk about it that much. But Obamacare really kicks in 16. You talk about deficits. Obamacare, actually, from a country standpoint, has to be gotten rid of. And you know what? It's no good for the people that have it either.
Well, we think of you as a business mogul, very successful business guy, very successful entertainer. But now you're a politician. You are into the world of politics. And if things go well for you, if things go well for you, you've got another 9 years of this.
Right.
You feel comfortable in a politician's skin? Because you've got to do politics.
It's actually a very interesting question, because I've been, for 3 months, I've been a politician, and I never thought I'd be a politician, but I just got so sick and tired with what's going on, and you report on it really well all the time, and you see what's happening, Stuart, and things that are so simple, like inversion, corporate inversion, like bringing the money back and they can't bring it back.
But that's the problem,
by the way, you know what's happening? You know what's happening? Stuart, it is simple. It's really simple, believe me. You know what's happening? Companies are leaving the United States with thousands of jobs in order to go get their money. That's what's actually happening.
But to change things, you've got to be a politician. You've got to play politics. You've got to deal with Congress. If you were sitting in the White House, you've got to compromise.
My whole life, Stuart, I've been dealing with politicians. I build all over the world. I deal with presidents. I deal with prime ministers. I deal with everybody. I deal with city councils. My whole life has been dealing with politicians and getting them to approve things. I get along with everybody. I get along with Democrats, with Republicans. I get along with everybody. And my whole life is that. I get things done. Look at Obama. He doesn't get it. I've hardly ever met him. You got to get things. You got to close the door and get things done without signing your executive orders all the time. That's the easy way out.
Well, you've been in politics for what, 3.5, 4 months? Are you having fun? Do you like it? Do you like
I do. I love, like, last night was incredible in South Carolina. Thousands of people, 8,000 people, so many people at my rallies, far more than anybody else. And there's such love in the room. I like it, and I love getting results. Today, as you saw, NBC came out with their poll. Wall Street Journal, I'm number one. CNN just came out with their major poll. I'm number one by a lot. The Boston Globe just came out with the poll in New Hampshire. I'm number one. When that happens, it's a lot easier to like it, Stuart. You do know that, right?
I do know that, sir. Yes,
much easier.
This is a financial program. I have to ask you, are you an investor? I know you're an investor in real estate. I understand that.
Yeah.
An investor in the Trump brand. I got it. Are you an investor in the stock market?
Okay, so what I did is years ago, about 2.5, 3 years ago, I looked and I was getting nothing in CDs. I think, my CDs, because I have a lot of cash, and I want to put my money in something where I get something where I'm not using it, and they're talking about less than 1/4% and even less than that. I said, whoa. So about 3 years ago, I'd actually send you a list of my stocks. About 3 years ago, I bought a lot of stock. First time in my life. I've never been a stock guy. I've never believed. I don't like to have other people running companies, okay, especially when they get paid $100 million to do it, okay? I don't like when I see a company where a guy gets $100 million and he sells ketchup. That is an easy thing to sell, okay? It's on every – I didn't name the ketchup, but it's on every table of every – you understand.
Are you going to tell us which
let me just say, I sold it all.
Ooh.
I sold it all in January. All of my stock I sold, almost all, but pretty much all of it. And I felt like a real genius because you know what happened. The market went way up. I sold it all. I'd give you a list. I actually had to file it, but I bought, I think, 54 stocks, or I bought 52 stocks and 48 went up. And I made money with them. So I felt very good. I feel like a great investor now. See?
What have you done with the money? Where is the money?
Now it's still getting almost no money in CDs.
So you're in cash.
You know what I did? I sold it in January. And the reason I did is I have so little confidence in our government. That's why I sold it.
Because you don't have confidence in the government?
Because I don't have confidence in our government. The people running our government, I don't have confidence in them. And that's why I sold the stock.
Do you own any gold? A lot of people run for covering gold.
Well, I haven't really, but, it's something that I used to look at very strongly, but somehow I guess we are off the gold standard for keeps, and it looks like we don't go back. But gold used to be something I used to like, but I have not bought gold now.
I've got to ask this last one. What do you got against tattoos?
Well, I have nothing against it, and frankly, it's more and more, so I'm not going to fight it. I personally don't know why somebody would do that, but I also understand. I have some friends that are great people and very smart people, and they love the tattoo thing,
Would you hire someone who had a visible tattoo?
I think probably I would. I'm going to be very nice when I say that. It's a very interesting. Where do you come up with that question? I'm curious. Did you hear that about me or something?
No, you and I have spoken before, and I think the last time I told you that if any of my children, and I've got 6 kids, if any of them gets a tattoo, they're out of the will. And you said yes. I agree with you, Stuart.
Let me put it very nicely. I wouldn't be thrilled. Okay, I wouldn't be thrilled if my kids. I have 5. If my kids came back home home with a big, fat, beautiful tattoo, I wouldn't be exactly thrilled. But you know what, Stuart? You're fighting against upward current, because I have never seen anything like it. You look now, everybody's got tattoos. I don't get it. And many of them, you know, the sad thing is many of them are put on by people that have no artistic ability whatsoever.
I've got to ask another last one. Do you ever imagine yourself walking into the Oval Office and sitting at that desk right there? Do you?
Well, maybe I'm starting to imagine it, but I don't even like to think about it. I just like to get things done, and right now I have the Republicans. You know, it started off with 17, now 2 have dropped out, but it started off with 17, and I'm leading the pack by a lot, actually. Well, and, you know, I think that assuming Hillary gets it, she's had a terrible record as Secretary of State. I think we'll win that, and we'll make our country great again, Stuart.
Well, sir, you've been with us for 20 minutes, and time really flew by, and we thank you very much for being on the show. Thanks, Donald.
It was my honor, really my honor. Thank you, Stuart.
Sir, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. How about that?
Good stuff.